Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. In this video, we'll be continuing to tie up some loose ends around the map in terms of detailing and other small things that I want to get done. And in this video, our main focus is going to be putting a retaining wall around this current set of tracks since it's in a much more urban area now. So we have this set of tracks here, which we sort of dug into the ground, expecting the city to grow over it, which it has, and it looks very nice coming through all of this. However, now that along this set of tracks it's a lot more built up and urbanized, it probably would make sense that this wouldn't just be a pit in the ground. So we're going to add a retaining wall along pretty much the entire length that it cuts through the city, probably until somewhere in this area. We'll have to figure out a good spot to transition it out, but the large portion over here will be covered, and I think that'll just help make this look a lot neater, a lot cleaner, and provide a much sharper edge for this set of tracks running through here. And so the first thing I think we're going to do is actually with our roads. And surprisingly, the city has sort of built up over here, and we're not going to bridge over these tracks. However, we will provide a crossing, so we'll get a road crossing. This will be a very, very low density road. Hardly any cars are going to come through this way, so I think having a crossing right here works out pretty well. Alright, now that we have this crossing in, let's clean up this road, and this will pretty much just have turn into this road. We don't really want to have multiple connections across here. We'll just have this one connection, and we'll roll with that. And so now moving on to getting our retaining wall in place. Now we do have this retaining wall asset, so we'll just have to get things sort of configured right, and then once we have that, we can pretty much come through and start placing this down along our tracks. Alright, so now we have everything configured. We can pretty much start wherever we want, and it automatically deals with the terrain for us. So because we have to go pretty high, I think we're going to give it a pretty good amount of distance between the tracks and the retaining wall, just so it doesn't feel very closed in. So pretty much we'll place this here, and then we'll just have to slowly follow it along and just keep placing it along this whole set of tracks. So thankfully these pretty seamlessly snap into each other. Issues when we run into bridges and stuff, we're just going to build with collisions for now, and then we will come back through and sort of tie it together, make it look nicer. But this whole process should be pretty much as easy as doing this the whole way down the set of tracks until where we want it to stop. And we'll just have to keep an eye, because some areas we might need to delete some buildings in order to make space, but I think this is all going to look pretty good once we're finished. Alright, and so I think we have the retaining wall done on this side. We'll have to come through and sort of hide some of these edges because the terrain doesn't seem like it's really playing too well with where it meets, but I think this works out pretty well. Our retaining wall looks pretty good throughout most of this. We did have to slowly start lowering it in some areas because it does get shallower the farther we go, but I think this looks good. We'll just repeat it on this side of the tracks, and then we should be good to pretty much just leave it as is and make it look good. Alright, and so here's what this retaining wall looks like if you were driving through it on the train tracks. It is pretty tall, but again, I do think that the width we provided helps to feel like it's not so crammed down here. So really all it is making this look good from here on. We'll have to redo some of the bridges to get the bridge supports right, although most of them look pretty good just like this. It seems like we have some minor collisions in some area, but not really anything that needs major readjusting. And so actually I think I'm okay with leaving almost all these bridges here, because they're not really in the way of anything. The only one is maybe this one, but this one's been like this forever, so there's not really an issue. The main thing I'm worried about is being able to blend the terrain here, which we'll probably have to use with the help of some landscaping and other stuff that you might see along the top of a retaining wall, especially in an urban setting. But we'll get through, do that, and we might have to also put collision tiles along here, because we used the ones that had collisions turned off, so buildings might spawn a little too close to the edge of these if we're not careful. And so let's start over here on these ends, and of course we'll have to flatten the land to make this fit. And I'm not sure why we're getting that really severe lip here. Maybe that's because that's what the terrain was before we started doing this. So maybe we have to delete a few of these and adjust the terrain and then come back through, and we might get a better looking retaining wall. So anyway, I'm not really sure of a fix for this. I think maybe it has something to do with the tracks as well, but I think we could be okay also just lowering it down to this height in some areas and then smoothing that out, and that might not look too terrible in some locations. But again, I think we're gonna have to hide a large majority of this with some trees, so we'll get a very thick band of vegetation right across the top here, and I think that's pretty much what we'll do in terms of covering this up, because clearly using terrain tools isn't working out that well. And so first, before we do any of that, I think we should get a road back in here. So we'll get a road placed along like this, and that should complement this pretty well. We'll just have to get these roads placed back in, and hopefully the city will just fill that in over time. Over here, this looks fine, so I'm okay with keeping this. I think we'll try to get rid of some of these, so that way we don't have any buildings facing this portion of the road. And so now that everything's cleared up along the retaining wall, let's come into our trees and get our brush here. Alright, and so now we have our brush selected with some of the trees that we want. We can pretty much just come through, paint all this, and we'll get this nice and thick across here. Again, we will come through with collision tiles so that buildings can't come in here and sort of destroy all this. But looking at it from both angles, this looks pretty good. Alright, so now we have one side of this done, just so you can get an idea of what that would probably look like. And I'm pretty happy with how that came out. You can't really see any issues at all with the terrain, so I'm pretty happy to get this in here, get it placed over on the other side, and then we can come through and do some other smaller touch-ups. Alright, now before we get too deep into this, let's go through and protect this with our collision tiles. Alright, and so with a couple of these placed just like this, we will slowly work this down through our tracks, and we'll add some paint down to where our tracks are, and that'll be this project pretty much wrapped up. Alright, and then our last sort of finishing touch on this, I think, is going to be, we're going to fill this all in with dirt. I think that's a good texture to use. We'll leave the actual rail texture in there, but everything else will just be this nice dirt color. Alright, and so here's some nice views down inside of this retaining wall area. I really like how it turned out. I think it's very cool to see something like this. I just think it all ties in really well, especially with the setting that it's in. And so moving on from this, we can move on to some other projects and areas that we think need a little bit of work. And now the next thing I was going to do was a recommendation in the comments that I was actually going to do probably anyway. but delete this road to get rid of that long line of traffic we had. But we actually seem to have made this road long enough to deter people from using it. So I suppose now that means if we check our destinations layer, a lot of those people should either be taking our highway or this secondary connection in. And although the numbers don't seem like it, there's definitely a lot less people on this road, or at least they're not getting stuck. So I guess there's no need to do that, and we'll leave this as it is. We can see there's no issues with cars coming into the city either, and things look okay despite some heavy traffic areas, but with a city this large, I suppose that is to be expected to some degree. And now the next thing that we're going to do is over here in Downey. We've always had issues sort of with our bus traffic in this area sort of getting stuck, and things sort of getting sort of gridlocked in this area. So we're just going to add a few bus lanes and then reroute some of our lines so we're not focusing it all on the same roads. So we'll upgrade all of these roads to have bus lanes, and hopefully we'll have to check here, but this route did actually automatically reroute to this road, because I think the issue is we have 4 lines coming through this station, so we end up with a ton of buses waiting here, and because this is just a traffic light intersection, they end up waiting quite a while. So by adding this larger road here with a bus lane, buses that don't necessarily need to use this road should now do what this route is doing and essentially go around it. And we can actually see that reflected on a few lines here, just seeing the lines, how they come in and take this bus route instead of turning here and cutting through this street, which is pretty much what they were doing before. Alright, so now I want to make a few minor adjustments. Over here, Winston-Salem, Albuquerque Distribution Center, we have a few truck lines over here which seem to be a little bit overloaded at the moment, such as this one here. So let's duplicate that and get a 4th or even a 5th truck in here. I think a rate of 174 would probably work, especially since our machines and goods truck is servicing essentially 2 resources, 2 of the most needed resources in Winston-Salem. So hopefully getting more trucks going through there should help empty that platform. All the other ones seem to have sort of a healthy amount waiting on each one. And then coming into these cities here, let's just take a look at our street layer. Really no buildup of traffic at all in Albuquerque, which is really nice considering the amount of traffic that we've had to deal with in the past here. And finally, it seems like our grid has filled out quite nicely with, seems like these are all commercial buildings. So very happy to see how this turned out. And even our new train station looks pretty good now that everything's sort of filled in around it. We have a bunch of people waiting for this Jackson to Albuquerque line, which let's just double check the Jackson end of that and make sure that we're handling that demand. And so there does seem to be a decent amount of people waiting here. I'm not sure if it necessarily warrants another train or redoing that line just yet. Let's just take a look at some of our other lines here. So it seems like our Jackson Montgomery line is finally situated. We managed to move out all 1,400 people that were waiting there before. However, our next issue now is this line, which is our sort of local train between Jackson, Winston-Salem, and Albuquerque. And if we come into Winston-Salem, this line, pretty much just a direct line between Winston-Salem and Jackson is what's really in demand, as it doesn't seem like there's really many people waiting to go between Albuquerque and Winston-Salem, especially considering we have a bus line and we have a boat line going between the two. So I'm unsure if we should take out the Albuquerque portion of this line and just run it as a direct line between Winston-Salem and Jackson, which would probably be more efficient, since we can see we're only taking 75 people into Albuquerque. I'm kind of split on that, but I think what we'll do, just so we can sort of help out a little bit, I think we'll sell 2 of these trains, and then we'll build a new line as the direct line from Winston-Salem to Jackson, and then really it's a hard thing to do, because this line then just gets reduced to a local line between Albuquerque and Winston-Salem, because our other line between Winston-Salem and Jackson would be taking over all of that demand. So I suppose it doesn't hurt to split it up that much, so let's just roll with it. We'll see what happens. So we'll manage this line. We'll take Albuquerque out of the equation, and we can get rid of one of these Winston-Salem stops. Actually, we kind of got ourselves in a bit of a problem here. So actually what we want to do is we want to have this come into either the first or second platform, I think. Or actually, we decided in the past that we want it on either platform 3 or 4. So we just really need a crossover, a set of crossover tracks here, and that should solve our issues. So now I think that is this solved, but clearly there's more demand needed between, or there is more demand between these cities. So I think we might be finally getting rid of these trains and swapping them out for something with a little bit more capacity. And so I think we'll be going with what has seemed to become one of our more favorite trains, this dual stocks multi-unit train. It has a capacity of just under 200, which is way more than we have before, and the loading speed is still really good, around the same. I think with this many people, loading speed's a really important number when we're moving close to 200, 300 people at a time. We need to make sure we can get them on and off as quick as possible. So I think we'll roll with that. We will get one more on, because I think we had probably about 7 before. So hopefully nothing's really compromised on that line. This should just be a general overall upgrade compared to those old trains. And then really all that's left is to get sort of just a small local train running between Albuquerque and Winston-Salem. And so what's interesting about this now is that we can grab one of these smaller multi-unit engines, maybe one of the ones that we probably wouldn't have used otherwise, and we can use those to get between these two cities. Since the demand is relatively low, we'll probably just be running one of these trains, and I think that might be this commuter train. So let's buy one of those, and again, I think one is all that we'll need, and that'll just go from Albuquerque. Well, I think we clicked the wrong one there. There we go. Albuquerque right into Winston-Salem. And so here's our train that'll be running on that line. I'm pretty happy with it. We'll just leave it go as it is, and we can move on to probably the last thing that we'll be doing in this video. And real quick, we just had a train drop off here at our Downey distribution center, and it's really nice to see all these platforms just loaded up with resources. Really makes it feel like it's being used to its fullest potential. And lastly, I want to come over, now that we've finally had enough time for our machines factory to get up and running to its fullest potential. We can see we have loads of machines waiting here, and if we take a look, hopefully we'll be able to see how this is getting split up, and we can figure out exactly how much needs to go on this train. And so unfortunately it seems like they're getting split pretty evenly. However, everything going into, I believe it's Jackson, we take away, because that's where our boat line is taking it, the same as the Santa Clarita line. And so I'd say we could maybe just round that up to about 350. And so adding these production numbers up gets us to about 1,600. Subtract however many we said, 350, and that should give us a rate of around 1,250. So we're still a little under here with these trains. I'm tempted on if we should add a third one or not. However, this line is pretty busy, so I think we might just roll with editing these and adding a few more boxcars. And so 4 more boxcars on each. We'll modify those. That gets us to about 1312, which is a little over what we said, but there will obviously be some variation in here as things grow and change. So I'm happy to leave this off just like this, and hopefully we'll see this platform slowly start to dwindle down. And so coming over to our cargo hub, now that we have all these new machines coming in, I just want to make sure we're getting rid of them. And it doesn't seem like we really have any backups anywhere. Our boats seem to be doing fine, although our Stockton fuel line looks like we might need to get another boat on this one. So let's just duplicate that. We'll get some more fuel getting out of the cargo hub. And everything over here seems to be doing well. Nothing's overloading the station. And so I'm pretty happy to leave this off like this. And real quick before we end this off, one thing I did notice is we are starting to get some traffic starting to pile up back here again. And let's just confirm that it probably is private transportation coming on this road. Unfortunately, we can't see that because our public transportation numbers are blocking that, but I'm assuming that's what that is. We can check over here on this road and see we are getting a little bit of people taking this road, so maybe we could try to incentivize this road a bit more, although there's not much more optimizing that we could do. I think the only way we really can fix this is to essentially rework these intersections here. Maybe we keep it 2 separate roads, or maybe we turn this into a 4-lane intersection sort of up here, and we add maybe a roundabout just so things continuously flow, which I think we might do that actually. So let's start by pulling this road back, and then we'll do the same here because this road will have to start climbing the hill much earlier. And then we'll pull these roads back, and first and foremost we will get our roundabout in, which will include 2 lanes. I don't think we need to go much more than that. We'll get a decent radius. This is going to be tricky on the side of a hill like this, but let's just go right about here-ish. Maybe we raise this up a tiny bit. And so then it's really just a matter of connecting our roads. We actually ended up turning on bus lanes, so we'll turn that off. So we'll get this road connected just like that. This road we actually probably want to pull back a little bit farther so we can come down the hill a little bit, and then we can connect in right about here. This road we'll probably want to continue. Now we could just bring it straight up, but I think what we really want to do is make it a little longer to force people to maybe not use it, so that it's less sort of attractive for people to take that route as opposed to our trains or our other public transportation. And so we'll slowly wind this up the hill until we get to pretty much about here, and that should do pretty well. Maybe we adjust this so it raises up a bit more and levels out a little bit closer to the top. So something like that. And then this road, which is probably going to end up being the steepest out of all of them, we'll just bring this up and wrap this around and bring this right into the roundabout as well. And so then all we have to do is just give it a quick smooth over so everything blends in well, and then we should be able to hit play and let it all just play out. And so obviously it's going to take a while before we start to see how things shake out here, but I think this is where we're going to end this video off. And so with that, that will be all for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.